Hey, this is Jake, and today we're going to tell you how and why you should rotate your tires. So one part of maintenance is rotating tires, and the reason we rotate tires is to make sure we get the most even wear across our tread and the longest life from our set of tires on our car as possible. So that's one main reason. Tires do wear differently front to rear depending on what axle is being driven and what wheels are being steered. And so we want to make sure that we have nice even wear across our tread. That's our goal. And we don't want a little bit of tread here and lots of tread here, or all our tread here and our corner to be gone. We want to make sure we have nice even wear. Another thing that will happen if we do not rotate our tires is on the tread. Sometimes you can feel it. You'll have a high and low spot here. If you run your hand across it, it feels almost sharp. So this part of the tread is high, that's low, that's high, that's low, that's high, that's low, that's high, that's low. And usually I call that sawtooth because it'll feel like an edge. And what that happens is if I drive these too long without rotating them, it causes that higher edge here and lower edge here. Well, when I do rotate them, eventually these tires get flipped from the right side to the left side. And so when these get flipped, now it's opposite, and now I'm wearing down that edge and compensating for that high-low when it's flipped. And that way I can kind of mitigate and hold down that. And what happens is usually I get a lot of noise from that tire where I've got that sawtooth action going on. It's going to wear really funny. And so we just, eventually it gets flipped, and then we're wearing down that high-low spot to compensate. And then in another 7,000 miles it gets flipped again. How should we rotate our tires? Well, that depends on your car. Generally speaking, for front-wheel drive cars, if this is our car, that's the front, that's the back. Generally what we do is we take our two front wheels, these get moved to the back of the vehicle, front axle to the rear axle, and then the back tires, they get moved across to the opposite side. So our passenger front will go to the passenger rear, the driver's front will go to the driver's rear, and then the rear tires would cross from the driver's rear to the passenger front, and from the passenger front to the passenger rear to the driver's front. That's how that would work if we're dealing with a front-wheel drive. Front-wheel drive. If it's a rear-wheel drive, if the rear axle is being driven, we would just do that opposite where we would move the tires up and then take the two front tires and cross them the other way. If it's all-wheel drive, there's some debate, meaning full-time all-wheel drive, which most cars aren't. Usually you are having two wheels being driven most of the time, and the other axle's just along for the ride. But in general, this is a pattern we're typically using for a front-wheel drive vehicle. So let's go do that. So we'll just start here. It doesn't matter where you start, but again, we're going to be taking these front wheels, our front tires, and we're going to be putting them on the back axle. One thing with this impact in particular, this puts out a lot of torque. It doesn't matter in reverse, but just be aware of that. I always want this on the lowest setting. And obviously you need to be using an impact socket. It needs to be this matte black color and not a chrome socket, so we don't hurt ourselves. So we're going to go take these off. And sometimes you'll get a lug nut stuck on here. So what I like to do is I'll take it off the gun so I don't do anything silly or hit the trigger while I'm trying to do this. But I'm just going to give this a few turns, 1, 2, 3, and then just give it a wiggle. That usually will be able to let me pull this off if this happens to get stuck on our lug nut. Just take that off by hand and just put those in the same place so you're not walking around trying to find your lug nuts later. Take the rest of these off. And the last one, I want to hold my tire. Right, make sure it's not going to fall off. And then I'm just going to walk this back to where I want it to go. So I'm going to take this back and put it by the back rear axle. Then we'll just go to the rear axle, we'll take that one off, and we're going to take that over to the driver's front. And then we'll do the opposite side and bring the driver's front that's currently on there to the back, and switch the other one on the rear axle to the front over here. So let's go do that. One other thing I forgot to mention is generally I put a little bit of anti-seize on the hub and the rotor because sometimes who knows when this is going to come off next. We don't need a lot of it, just a little bit. I'm just going to coat just that part right there. What happens is I get a lot of rust and oxidation that happens right here, and what can happen is it almost acts like glue that holds the wheel against this hub here, but this will prevent that. Some people like to put a little bit of anti-seize on the threads here. You can do that. Some people don't, so I know I'm going to get comments down below saying, no, you shouldn't do that, or yeah, it's a good idea. I always put a little bit, and the reason people say no is because when I go to torque this, because now there's lubricant on it, now it can be potentially over-torqued. I don't know. That's still up for debate and will be for a long time, but I put a little bit on there and that makes sure everything is working properly. So let's go ahead and mount up our wheel. I always make sure I got one in my hand ready to go. And again, bend with your legs, not your back. Pick up your tire. Or if you need two people, grab two people, use your leg, line them up. And I always just put one on here. Always put it on by hand. Give it about 2 or 3 turns. That way you're sure that the threads are working properly. If it binds up or acts weird, it's not going on properly, let me know. I'll come help you out. Or that lets you know you get something wrong with your thread here or internally inside that nut where someone messed it up before you did. So always put them on by hand first so you don't get messed up. So then I'm going to just take these, again, all their other 4, give them about 2 turns, make sure they go on nice and easy. And now we can use our impact just to snug these up. Now this particular impact, this is where I adjust how much torque. That's a little bit, that's a lot. You got a little line, big line. I always keep this on the lowest line, make sure I'm going this way. And even on the lowest setting, this will put out about 100, 110 foot-pounds, I would say, on average. If I go up even higher, just 1 notch above that, I'm over-torquing these wheels, and I don't want to do that. So leave it on this lowest setting. And I just go till it touches and I stop. I don't keep hammering on this, okay? I'm also going to make sure I use a star pattern. So if I started here, I'm not using the 2 lug nuts to the right or left of it. I'm going to pick this one or this one. So we'll go here. It's next. And then again, I don't pick these 2. I got to go across. So I did this one. I'm going to go here. And then again, I can't pick these 2. So I'm going to go here. And last but not least, I've got one more. And you might want to go back to that first one, just check it, because sometimes it's a little loose. But you notice that was a star pattern. I went like this, boom, 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 boom. And if I went up here, that would make a star. That's why we call it a star pattern. The reason we do that is if I go in a circular motion, or clockwise or counterclockwise, sometimes where the hub is and where the tire is, it goes like this. And when you start tightening them down, it actually locks on the tire at an angle, and we don't want that. So we hit it here. And when we go across, that pulls up snug against the hub. So that's what we want. That's why we always do that star pattern when we're doing this. So we need to do one more thing. We'll put on the rest. I won't show that on camera, but then we're going to lower this down, and then we're going to torque the wheel down, and then we're ready to go. So last but not least, I want to torque this down with a torque wrench. I'm not counting on that impact torquing at the proper level. You need to look up the torque specs for your car that you have. I have the book here in my class, or you can look it up online to see what torque your car takes for that year, make, and model. I know this one is 100 foot-pounds, so I'm going to set my wrench to 100 foot-pounds. Depending on what wrench you have, set yours to whatever that specification is. If you're in my class, I'll show you how to set the torque wrench properly. So I'm at 100 foot-pounds. I like putting extension on here. Don't make it too long, or that will affect how much you can torque it. But like a 4-inch extension is good, so I don't hit my fender here when I'm torquing this. Also, I'm going to use that star pattern again. So I'm going to start here, and go here. Clicks, I'm done. I don't need to keep clicking it, okay? But again, I'm going to do my star pattern. Click. 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 Okay? So those are all torque. Now, if you're working at a shop Today, most places require that your work is double checked. So if you're working with me, the person on your team, you're going to hand them the wrench, and yes, they're going to go around and check all four wheels because that's what's done or expected at a dealership, quick service, independent shop today. That's what we do just to ensure that everything is done properly and just double checking our work. So don't be offended. It's not that you don't know what you're doing, but everything gets double checked. And everything is all about safety and making sure customers taken care of. So you're going to do this to all four tires, work your way all the way around. You hand this off to the person who's going to double check your work, and they're going to go all the way around and torque them down, and you're done with your tire rotation.